Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm planning on covering a lot of miles today, and what better way to start the day than to pull up a pile of weeds. It's about an hour after sunrise, and as I'm leaving the anchorage, there's another small boat coming in to explore. It was generally a quiet night, however I did get some hull slap partway through the night, which woke me up, but it didn't last too long. The Huron Jewel, which was anchored nearby last night, has left about 15 minutes before me and already has its full sails up, making for a beautiful way to start the day. After leaving Harbor Island, Michigan, my plan is to head about 40 miles up the St. Mary's River to the Soo Locks. After the locks, I will be on Lake Superior, and after determining what the weather and conditions are like, I'll decide how far I want to go today. The St. Mary's River is the only way for ships to get from Lake Superior to the rest of the world, so it's very common to see large ships. I don't have any experience navigating around large ships, so I'm a little nervous to run into one. However, I also think they're rather cool, so I do want to see quite a few of them. To the right is Lime Island, which is a Michigan park where apparently you can go camping and rent cabins. Because of all the large ships, there is a deeply dredged channel going all the way to the locks that is very well marked. The channel goes through several big lakes. However, the lakes themselves can be very shallow, so watch your depth gauge if you stray out of the channel. I have no idea what the function of the red and white buoy to the left is that's sitting near one of the channel markers. If anybody knows what it is, please let me know. Coming up to Sault Ste. Marie at the end of the St. Mary's River, I paused as a ferry passed. This has got to be one of the shorter ferry routes you can take, and I think the whole thing lasted less than 2 minutes. Must have taken longer to load and unload the ferry than it does to actually go anywhere. It is $20 for a car to cross on this ferry, and it runs year-round. This river seemed to be full of unknowns for me because I also could not figure out why these yellow booms were stretched from these small islands to the right here. The building to the left is a hydropower plant, and I gotta say it's one of the best looking power plants I think I've ever seen myself. I was disappointed that my time on the river didn't have any big freighters going up and down. However, as I was coming into the Sault Ste. Marie Marina, I did see this cruise ship docking. I had just radioed into Caps Marina to ask for somebody to meet me at the fuel dock to catch lines and help me fill up. Before entering, I always try to scan over whatever breakwall marinas have to see if anybody's leaving or entering, looking for antennas, fishing poles, that sort of thing. So I had to pause for a moment to try to figure out what this boat was doing. It looked like it was leaving, however, decided to turn around and stop at the fuel dock itself. I admit I was a little frustrated with this whole situation. The dockhand didn't direct the boat that docked in front of me to pull forward so I'd have space to pull in right behind them, which would be the easiest thing to do. I also was kind of hovering around waiting for the dockhand to give me directions. However, he was filling up, so I was just awkwardly sitting there for a while before I decided to go and just dock in front of them, since fuel lines are usually long enough anyway. The captain of the boat behind me decided to help me dock, which was nice of him. After I had docked and waited for a little bit for the dockhand to come and fill up my boat, the boat behind me came and asked me to move so they could go forward to get a pump out. It wasn't very windy, so I decided to just move myself. However, if it were windier, I'd ask them to go around me, and I'd pull my boat back since they had more than one person, and I was just single-handed. After topping off my fuel tank, I put out my large fenders to get ready to go through the lock, which was just about a mile away across the river in Canada. The large black freighter you see in front is the Valley Camp Museum ship. On my way back from Lake Superior, I did stop in Sault Ste. Marie and spend the night at this marina, and got to go walk around and take a look at how the old sailors used to live. I'll talk more about that in a future video when I come back through this way. The white boat you see in front of me is a Soo Locks tour boat. For $30, they will take you up the Soo Lock and then back down, giving you a history lesson along the way. There are 5 Soo Locks. I crossed the river and heading over to the Canadian lock because it is meant for pleasure vessels only. My understanding is you can get your boat through any of the locks you want. However, this one is just a little bit more convenient and low pressure. Even though it is the Canadian lock, you do not need a passport in order to go through it. I had called on the phone earlier that day to ask how the lock works, what channel to call on the VHF, and what kind of setup I'd need, port or starboard tie. They were very helpful and informative, so I didn't feel any pressure at all coming up to the lock. The wait was about, I'd say, 15 minutes before the lock opened. However, the wind had pretty much completely died at that point, so drifting there was incredibly stress-free. There's also that blue wall you see up there on the right, which has a dock underneath it where you can go and tie up while waiting for the lock. As I was entering the lock, they asked me to go up to the second ladder and take a hold there. I entered very slowly and cautiously and really took my time to ensure there were no issues. I was figuring all this out for the first time, and I found a good solo solution that worked for me. I wrapped my midship line around one cable, went to the stern and wrapped my stern line around another. Then I was able to run both lines to the inside of the cabin and easily keep the entire boat against the wall safely. The whole lock lifted so slowly and gently I didn't even notice it was filling at first. I was also able to take my lines and walk easily to the back deck with no issue. You do need to turn your engines off while you're in the lock, so you don't really have a whole lot of control other than hanging on to the side. I did have a little bit of company locking up. There was one large cruiser right behind me. I had spent the last few days being nervous about going through the lock by myself. However, the whole situation was just very calm and easy to do, and built a lot of confidence in myself and the boat. Spent most of the time in the lock chatting with the lock keepers. The only information they needed from me was my boat documentation number, and there was no fee or anything to go through. On the Lake Superior side of the lock, there are double lock gates in the wall that couldn't quite understand why you'd need two of them. My guess would be the first one would just be close it so you can do maintenance on the lock, but what the second one's for, I'm not quite sure. If you have any ideas, please let me know. You do pass two railroad swing bridges. The red one looks like it's out of service. There's no track on the left side there. However, the second one does seem like it still has track, but I'm not sure how often they use it. Just after the locks on the Lake Superior side, there seems to be quite a lot of industry. There are many tugboats and ship docks along the shore. I briefly pulled off the channel in order to let the boat that was behind me in the lock pass and to take all my fenders and stow them for the remainder of the trip today. And then finally, the moment arrived that I was both dreading and very excited for. I finally entered Lake Superior. While I was still in Whitefish Bay, I was finally treated to a giant freighter sighting. I don't really have too much information on this freighter. I forgot to write it down when I looked it up on AIS, but it was probably 800 to 1,000 feet long. Starting out my day on the lake, it was about a foot to a foot and a half foot waves, making a little rumbly, and wind picked up a little bit, but this was the worst of it for today. This Ranger Tug can handle these conditions just fine at speed. It's actually more comfortable to go fast, so you don't get rocked around nearly as much and ride on the crest of the waves. It's perfectly safe, although the interior of the cabin does seem to get a little bit squeaky sometimes. The sandy point you see sticking out to the left up ahead is Whitefish Point. 16 miles to the northwest lies the Edmund Fitzgerald. And right now it feels like I'm going over a ship graveyard with the amount of shipwrecks in the area. My general plan for Lake Superior was to take advantage of several great days of wind and weather, and essentially beeline it right to the Apostle Islands. Then on my return trip, I would spend a lot more time visiting all the ports on the way back. Since the day was going so smooth and fast, I decided to stick my nose in a little harbor I was passing. Forgive me if I mispronounce this, but I believe this was Grand Marais. My original plan was to use this as a backup stop in case the weather was bad and I needed to stay someplace safe. But right now I'm going to be saving this area for the return trip. But since I was here anyway and this boat can easily hop in and out of harbors, I decided to see what was in my future. There is a small town wall you can tie up at, and you can also anchor in the bay. Plenty of moorings around. Continuing with my mission to anchor out more, I arrived at Murray Bay, north of Munising, Michigan. Murray Bay is a small bay on the south of Grand Island. One of the really cool things about this bay is that nearby there is a shipwreck in probably only 15 feet of water, and on a sunny day you're supposed to be able to see it quite clearly. I arrived late in the day, but still had enough time to get my dinghy out and explore the area. Along the shore of the island, it looks like there are nice sandy beaches with campsites you can actually go and visit. I'm not sure how you're supposed to get to the campsites, but I believe the island itself has a ferry, so maybe there's a walking path behind the trees. The water is crystal clear and looks like sandy bottom. Despite all that, I did manage to hit a log with my dinghy, but no damage to the prop, so that's good. Disappointingly, the lighting was bad that day, so I was not able to see the shipwreck, only a faint outline. As you'll see, I did pull up my anchor because I just could not get it to hold, even though it was pure sand bottom. So I pulled it up, went out again, and really set it as best I could. I didn't have any other issues that night, so everything held well until the morning. Well, thank you for watching day 4 of my trip. There is plenty more to come, so if you're interested in that, please subscribe. Until then, I will see you next time.